Hello wonderful people, it's Genevieve, and in this video I'm going to show you a super easy way to draw a sunflower in Procreate. So open up the app and let's start drawing. So the first thing to do is obviously to create a new canvas. You can use whichever size that you want depending on the project you're doing. This is the size of the canvas that I am using. But again, this is just for reference. The reason I'm using this size is because I'm using one pre-textured file, as you can see here, that comes with some of my brushes. This file is not necessary as well. You don't need it to do this project, but I just like to have this kind of fun texture on my sunflower. If you want to check it out, it will be linked in the description below. That being said, when you have your canvas, go ahead and create a new layer, and on this layer we're going to draw a few guides. So I recommend that you rename this layer to guides. And in your wrench icon in the canvas section, select drawing guide and then edit drawing guides. And we're going to use the symmetry tool to help us kind of plan out the petals of the flower. So in the symmetry, select radial and then rotational symmetry. And you can adjust the opacity and thickness slider as you want. They're really just about how the guides are displayed, so it doesn't affect the final result. Make sure that if you double tap on your guide layer here, you have drawing assist activated. That is super important. And we're just going to really quickly sketch the petals. So for that, I'm going to use the sketching pencil brush that comes with my ultimate gouache brushes, which are the brushes that I'm going to use for this tutorial, but you can use really pretty much any brush that you want. If you don't have the brush set, go ahead and select the HB pencil that comes with Procreate. And yeah, we're just sketching real quick. And you can see here, whatever we draw in one of the kind of pie section that we've created with this symmetry tool is automatically going to be repeated in the other pie sections. So that way you can just map out really quickly some super simple petals as well as the center. Don't worry about making this precise at all. At this point, we're just trying to have a rough guide to help us in the next step. And before moving on, I kind of like to just tweak the layer a little bit. And what I mean by that is literally just setting it to multiply and lowering the opacity. That's just me though, so you might not have to do that. And I also like to kind of uncheck the drawing guide to hide it, just so that it's not in the way anymore. Once those little things are done, go ahead and create a new layer, put it below the guides and rename it to petals. And on this layer, as you probably guessed, we're going to be drawing the petals. So you can pick pretty much any color you like, but I recommend like a mustard yellow because we're drawing a sunflower. And I'm going to be using the soft round brush, or the clean round brush actually, from the gouache brush set. But like I was saying, you can use pretty much any brush. If you only have the regular brushes that come with Procreate, you can use one of the acrylic brush that comes in the painting section. It's not going to be exactly the same effect, but I mean, it's going to work. So yeah, in my case, I'm going to be using the clean run brush. And at this point, all we're doing is we're kind of sketching the outline of the petals. And as you can see here, I am adding some extra petals and not really just following the guide perfectly. I like to add some smaller petals in between the main ones that are in the guide, and kind of sometimes not even drawing over the guide. The guide is really pretty much just there to help you kind of keep something that is not totally loop-sided, or like, it just helps you keep some sort of balance and also, you know, a basic idea of what to draw and where to draw, but you don't want to follow it exactly, otherwise it's going to look super static and kind of too symmetrical, which makes sense because we use symmetry. Once you have your outline, you can just use the color drop to fill in the shape, and you can adjust the threshold by moving your pencil from left to right and kind of leaving it just until, or just before, it fills in the entire screen. And you might want to go over some spots that might have been left blank by color fill, so just really quickly with your pencil, or your paintbrush I should say, just filling in those spots. Awesome! So at this point, we're going to go ahead and create another layer. This one, we're going to put it below the petals, and we're going to rename it to extra. And on this one, we're going to kind of draw petals that would be a bit darker because they would be kind of behind the front ones. So you just go and select your color and make it slightly darker and maybe a bit more orange as well. Nothing too crazy here. And you can pretty much put those petals really wherever you want. I kind of like to fill in some spots that, you know, feel a bit sad. And I like to make them a bit thinner and more pointy. you can see here, I'm really going in, zooming out, and kind of trying to see how I can balance the flower a little bit better by adding some of those extra petals. And believe it or not, once we're done with this step, we're done with the hardest part of the tutorial. What we're going to do now is going to create a new layer. This one we're going to be putting it on top of the petals layer, and we're going to be renaming it to center. And on this one, as you can guess, we're going to be drawing the central dark brown, like burnt orange part of the sunflower. And you can use the same brush that you've been using from the start, maybe making it a little bit bigger. And I recommend that you just draw the circle freehand. Don't use any like perfect circle tools. You want it to look a little bit, you know, crazy, not fully crazy. You don't want it to be a triangle, of course, but you want it to feel organic because we're drawing a flower, not like a perfect whatever. And you can always use the arrow tool here to make it a little bit bigger or put it somewhere else in the flower if it's not exactly how it should be or how you want it to be. I quite like having it to be the same size as the petals themselves. So that's a good guide that you can use. We're then going to activate alpha lock on the petals layer by swiping it towards the right with 2 fingers. You're gonna see this little check patterns appear behind the shape, and you can also double tap on the layer and see that alpha lock is now activated. And what alpha lock does, basically everything we draw on this layer now is going to stay within the shape that was drawn. So that's super helpful and it saves a ton of time. If you have the gouache brushes, you can switch to the wet streaks one. Otherwise, you can just keep the one that you've been using so far for the base. And speaking of the base, you're going to go back to your yellow color that you used at first to draw the petals. You're just going to make it slightly darker and a little bit more orange. And at this stage, all we're going to do is we're going to outline really quickly the petals. And don't worry about making it pretty right now. All we want at this stage is to kind of show where the individual petals are, where they start, where they stop. And make sure that you don't have them overlap in all the same direction. Like you don't want to always go from like the petal on the left is on top of the one on the right and then just go around and keep that same order. That's going to look a little bit crazy. So you want to make sure that they overlap in sort of a random way. And take your time here, experiment. You can always erase or start over and just roughly sketch everything. Again, it doesn't need to be pretty at this stage at all. We just want to kind of see a little bit of what we're doing, and then we're going to make it look nice. So once you have your outlines laid out, we're going to go in and with the same brush, just a little bit bigger, we're going to start kind of adding the shadows on the petals that are being overlapped. Is that a verb? Overlapped? the petals that are below some of the ones in front. And you can also add some texture on all the petals basically. I like to have it start from the center and not quite reach the top of the petal. And here you can be really, really rough and quick. That's going to help in the end to have a painterly look. So I recommend just really roughly going over and adding some texture here. In this step, you can really do as many times as you want. Here I'm going to do it twice. So go ahead and select an even darker and even oranger version of your color and make your brush slightly smaller. And you're going to just reinforce some of the shadows. So at this step, it's also really cool to add some triangular shape, kind of starting from the center. And it's basically going to be creating this hourglass shape between the petals. So hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, just look at the video and you'll probably understand what I mean. But basically, you're going to create this illusion of a gap that is kind of between the petals when they meet with the center. That's going to make it feel a bit more like a sunflower, and it's just going to add more dimension to the drawing at the end. And if you want a super realistic and detailed piece, you would do this step a few more times, so going in with an even smaller brush and an even darker color, and just focusing on making these shadows even more detailed and precise. Once you're done, you're going to do the same thing on the extra layer, so creating alpha lock by either selecting it in menu or swiping the layer with 2 fingers towards the right. And then with the same color, you don't have to go way darker. In the same brush, you're just going to kind of show that there is this overlap between the front layer of petals and this back layer of petals. Yeah. We're also going to add some highlights. So going back to the petals layer and going back to your base yellow color, making it just brighter this time. You want it to be like super bright. It's probably still going to be in your history. Otherwise, you can always just, use your finger and go select the color. But yeah, it's probably still going to be in your history, or otherwise you just pick like a super bright yellow. It's not it's not that important. With your same brush, maybe just a little bit bigger, you're going to roughly swipe over not all the petals, just like one every 2 petals, one every 3 petals, and towards probably the point mostly you're going to add some like super rough and loose little lines, and that's going to add again more dimension. It's just going to make it feel like there's sun hitting your sunflower. And depending on the look you're going for, you might want to use the smudge tool, setting it to stucco or whichever you're used to using, or if you have the gouache brushes, you can use the blender, like the streaky blender, and you might want to just smudge your colors a little bit, but again, that really depends on the feel we're going for here. I'm going to roughly, as you can see, super quickly go over my colors so that they are a little bit less digital looking, but you could totally just stop and not blend here. Oh, and guys, I want to try something new. If you've made it this far in the video, just pause it for a second, scroll down, and comment symmetry. It would really help me to kind of know how far people make it in the video, if I need to slow down or go faster, that kind of things. So it would really help me make better tutorials in the future. And also, it's really cool for me to see who's watching, because I'm here alone recording stuff and I don't know who you guys are. You know who I am, but seeing your username is really fun. So just pause the video, go down, comment symmetry, and we'll keep going. Great, so at this point, all we have left to do is the center, which is really exciting. So going back on your center layer, you're going to use either the same brush that you've been using for the base or the streaky brush if you have, again, the gouache brushes. You could also try the actual gouache brush that comes with Procreate. I'm not a fan of it, but you can experiment with it. But yeah, otherwise I'm going to be using the streaky brush, and we're going to select from the history or from the canvas the brown that we used for the center and making it slightly lighter. And we're just going to draw some like really rough little lines that kind of start not quite in the middle of our like center brown piece. We want to have a gap basically, and I kind of like to think of it as an eye, as an iris. There would be the pupil in the center. That's kind of the same effect that we're drawing here. And we're also going to do the same thing, but this time making the base brown colored a darker brown and drawing some lines. And you're gonna see here I'm really struggling to make my lines show up. No matter how dark I go, it just don't show up, and you're gonna see why really soon. I made a mistake, and hopefully that might be helpful to you. Let's see when I realize it. There we go. So the slider here on the left or the right, depending on whether you are left-handed or right-handed, is for the opacity of your brush. And my opacity was really lowered, so it wasn't like the color would just not show up. So make sure, if sometimes like it doesn't seem to be working like it should, make sure the opacity of your brush is 100%. Otherwise you might be having some issues. And just like for the petals, you can go and do this step as many times as you want, making your brush smaller every time if you want more details. And once you're done, just go ahead and fill in the center with your dark color, kind of like if you were drawing the pupil in your eye. And for the very last step, you're going to go back to your basic yellow color, but this time you're going to make it super light and a little bit gray. If you have the gouache brushes, go back to your clean round or soft round. Otherwise, you can just stay with the same brush that you've been using. And we're going to add little circle and dots that are going to make everything pop. And that's the best step in my opinion, because it just makes everything come together really nicely. So you're kind of grouping them in group of 2, 3, 4, 5, something like that. And yeah, you're just going around, kind of around the pupil, if we use the same eye analogy as we did before. And you're kind of having 2 or 3 rings of these little dots, but you don't want them to be perfect rings. They're kind of a bit crazy. Again, we're drawing something organic, so we don't want it to be perfectly straight and circular. And yeah, this is how to draw a super easy, simple sunflower. Again, depending on how many details you want, how realistic you want this to be, you could go back on your petal layer and add even more shadows and be even more precise. Like I went really quickly here for the sake of this tutorial, but you can, you could spend an hour if you want on this flower and get it to look super realistic. As usual, if you enjoyed this tutorial, make sure to give it a thumbs up because it really does help the channel, and make sure to share the results with me as well because I always love to see what you guys create, so either on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. And before you leave, don't forget to subscribe because I put out new videos just like this one every week. I'll see you soon.